You know, it is a selfish act to be loving because it just feels damn good, right?
It really does. There's what was it called? The Art of Selfishness, where Ayn Rand talks about that selfishness is truly a benevolent selfishness is good. I mean, you want to do good because it makes you feel good. So yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, now Elisa is one of the authors in our book, which I've been raving about on the show, that has just come out, called Awakened by Death. You know, I found Elisas blog. Well, Erik, I would suspect, or my mob led me to it, because, you know, one of, like I call it,
you got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Right, we're off and running. Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Look who I have with me today, for those of you who don't know who she is. Her name is Elisa Medhus, Dr. Elisa Medhus, who is the creator of the channeling Eriks Blog and a couple of books. Welcome to the show, Elisa.
I'm so glad to have you here, Karen Swain, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, dang. Look, now Elisa is one of the authors in our book, which I've been raving about on the show, that has just come out, called Awakened by Death. You know, I found Elisa's blog. Well, Erik, I would suspect, or my mob led me to it, because, you know, one of, like I call my spiritual team my mob, and one of my mob is actually Jesus. And the very first...
Lucky you. I need Jesus. I need Jesus on my team, for sure.
He's with everybody. He's with everyone.
Okay.
Anyone that is spreading, you know, he was a physical representation on earth of a band of consciousness. And that band of consciousness is compassion, reconciliation, unconditional love. So anyone that's spreading that message has Jesus on his team, right? And you are one of them. Anyway, I want to finish this, and I want to tell you what I saw with Erik the other day. So the very first, you know, session I saw with you was the one with Jamie and Jesus, which is actually the one where he has the EVP on it. You know, breathless.
Amazing.
That was the very first one I saw.
And hearing Jesus's voice too.
Yes, saying yes.
I mean, God, how many people have been able to hear Jesus's voice in the last 2,000 umpteen jillion years?
He's actually very present on this planet, because because our planet, as you know, which we're going to nut out, we're going to get into, but as you know, reconciliation and unconditional love and forgiveness and all those attributes that he represents is so needed. It's so needed, even amongst the spiritual community or the new age or even the religious community. Like, I think some of the religious people are the worst. The comments, you know, I know that you get a lot of comments. The comments I get from the staunchly religious people, the vilification that I get, you know, I just get slammed. And yet they're representing Jesus, who represents reconciliation and unconditional love. So it's really interesting. Our planet is in need of this, isn't it?
It certainly is. And that reminds me of a story. One of the mediums I used to use, Kim Babcock.
Oh, Kim,
she's a Catholic, and she was with the same church all of her life, and her family too. Well, they found out that she was a medium. They kicked her out. Now, I don't think that's something Jesus would do, right?
Jesus was a medium.
Inclusive.
Jesus
was a medium.
Hello?
He was a medium. Yeah. So it's just ludicrous. And, you know, hey, Elisa, you're talking to the devil and all that. And I will admit that Erik can be a devil sometimes, but he is not the devil. So, it's really, especially when right after Erik died for the first few years, it was just I was just trying so hard to help people with the blog, and to have people spit out this vitriol was really hard. So I stopped reading comments for a while. And
you froze for a minute. Yeah, I know. You get a lot of, I know. You've had look, anyone that puts themselves out there in the public eye is going to come up against this energy that we're here to actually alleviate. I mean, the whole reason that you work tirelessly and that I work tirelessly, and pretty much for no money, the two of us, I have to do it.
Oh yeah, none. It costs me money to do what I'm doing, but
exactly,
we get paid in other ways,
You do,
right?
Absolutely. But the very reason that we're doing it is to help with the shift. To help humanity rise. I mean, Erik's doing all that he can from his side of the equation, and and that's to help people overcome their negative thoughts or their stressful thoughts. It never feels good to vilify somebody, to judge somebody, to criticize. It never feels good. It actually feels a lot better to be loving and to be open and to be happy. And, it is a selfish act to be loving because it just feels damn good, right?
It really does. There's what was it called? The Art of Selfishness, where Ayn Rand talks about that selfishness is truly a benevolent selfishness is good. I mean, you want to do good because it makes you feel good. So yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, I had a bit of a, talking about Team Mob, I was just, thinking about getting online with you yesterday, and I had a bit of a chat with Erica, like, Erik, are you there? And, got anything to show me? And this is what he showed me. It was amazing. I wish I could paint it somehow. He showed me this. Imagine that you were looking at a whole group of people, but all you could see was light. And it was almost as if they were just the outlines of bodies. So
I can see that.
You can see that. Many people have depicted that. So he was like, he kind of stepped out of that light and came forward, but he kind of was dragging a tail of light behind him that was connected to the group. And he was standing there in his Erik persona. And I just went, wow, cool. It was just such a cool image. And he was saying that, like, I'm connected to this team because what we've been talking about on the show and in the Inner Sanctum is our spiritual team, that, our guides are not one singular. We're not one singular person. We are a part of a team, a spiritual team that is, as Francis says in the team books, that is as close to us as breathing. We're not even operating as one person. We're operating as a member of a team. Mm-hmm. And he showed me this image of him being connected to this team of light, and there were just thousands. It was, you couldn't count them, but just this mob. I call my team the mob. And so
I like that. I like that.
It was beautiful. So, we, from our linear mind perspective, when we chat to Erik, we're chatting to a personality, and we're thinking linearly, singularly, like we're talking to one person. But
it's not.
He's actually like Jesus was a representation of a band of consciousness. So is Erik. He's a representation of this team. So, that was a beautiful image.
Oh,
anyway,
I love that.
Yeah.
But we're all part of a collective anyway.
That's
right.
Separation
is an illusion that is basically made possible through the ego. And you have to have that in order to experience the human experience. You have to have that illusion of separation and that illusion of linear time.
That's right. And what I love about the channeling Erik thing is that he has maintained that sort of ego perspective, the Erik persona. They're like the swearing, they're like, hey, what up? Like all that, all that yo-yos.
Well, I know. He really does that because he wants to be more approachable. He wants to have people connect to him on a human level because it's easier than when some spirit comes down and says, welcome, my dear one. I mean, it's hard to relate to somebody like that because they seem like they're so elevated.
That's right. And he makes exactly. My team, my mob said to me all the way along, like stay relatable. And because the human mind needs something to sort of relate to, to relate to some disembodied spirits that's holier than thou. Seems like with a lot of people who are going through worthiness issues, and people who go through worthiness issues are the ones that are vilifying the others. But we're here to release our worthiness issues. So if we feel unworthy of connecting to Mother Mary or Jesus or whatever, we're just not going to do it, right?
Yeah, it's like, why would they talk to me? It's that kind of thing,
Yeah, exactly.
And when we interviewed Jesus, I got slammed. It's like, why would Jesus talk to you? You're just a regular person. He would only talk to people like the Pope. It's like, I don't think you know Jesus the same way I know him. Plus, all spirits, especially Jesus probably, can split themselves off infinitely. And so they can be in infinite places at once. So there.
Jesus is like, his whole thing was about the people. He wasn't hanging out with the popes. He was hanging out with the people. Anyway, don't get me on that stuff.
Oh, God, don't get me started too.
we can talk about this all day. But listen, your chapter in the book, your chapter in the book is, because I'm here to sort of promote the book as much as to promote the rest of it, because the proceeds are going towards charity. One of the charities is from one of our authors in the book, who is called Scarlett Lewis. She started a movement called Jessie Lewis, I Choose Love, and she's putting emotional education in schools. So she's doing so well. Her son was shot in the Sandy Hook shootings. Her 6-year-old was gunned down along with 6 teachers and 20 other school children. And she had this amazing kind of epiphany, like when she realized that every fear, her greatest fear, like you've lived your greatest fear, she's lived her greatest fear, like that my child would be killed. That's a mother's greatest fear, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the worst thing that can happen to a human being.
The worst thing that can happen, I think, as a mother, is probably the worst thing that happened. But so she's lived her greatest fear, and she had this epiphany that when she realized that she was living her greatest fear, she had this realization that every other fear that she ever had disappeared because it was irrelevant compared to this, right? Yeah. And she had this experience of grace. Like she was just like inside this emptiness, this grace. And inside this grace and this emptiness, these thoughts started downloading about the shooter. And she said that, he was just a kid. He was a kid that no one taught how to get over his stressful thoughts, right? He started stressing. He started hating on himself. And as those thoughts grew and grew and grew, he started hating on everyone else. And he took a gun and went to his school, his high school, and machine gunned down as many people as he could find. And she thought, if someone had taught this kid how to overcome his stressful thoughts, it would never have happened. And so she's doing that. She's putting programs in schools.
What a courageous.
She's great, right?
That's so awesome. Eric, but Eric told us in an interview that the solution to, am I frozen?
No, you've come back. You've come back. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've come back.
You've come back.
He said that it's not about gun control, okay? It's about
mind control.
Teaching children mindfulness, be able to be vulnerable, learn emotional honesty with yourself and others, learn nonviolent communication. That's a great book to teach kids. Learn how to meditate, learn how to communicate without fear, and know whatever's making you feel bad about yourself. You got to ask yourself, is that really coming from me? Did it originate from me? Or is that, am I internalizing that from a peer or a sibling or parents or teachers? So I think that's where the solution is.
That's where it's at. Yeah. That's my passion, to elevate consciousness, because I think that's the solution. It's not about taking the guns out of the solution of all the problems of our world is to elevate consciousness, because when we realize that we're all one, we're one with the planet, we're one with the animals, we're one with everything, we'll stop polluting the planet, we'll stop killing each other. That's the solution, is consciousness, from my perspective. And I think that
I agree. Yeah.
That's what you're doing with your blog and the books and everything too. I think that. So the proceeds are going towards the Jessie Lewis was her son's name, Choose Love enrichment program. So she's made it very secular so that schools get a hold of it, because you can't get too woo-woo when you're talking with schools, right? So it's based in neuroscience, it's based in mindfulness, and it's a very sort of secular, free, and she's making it free to schools. So I want to support that program. So that's where the proceeds are going to. Yeah, one of them. And there's a few other charities. There's a little boy in Africa who's was a street kid, and he's taking in street kids and looking after them. I want to support him too. He's just doing it off his own bat. He's not connected to any charity, but he's got a group of healers in America that are supporting him, and I want to support him too. So there's a few people I want to support if we make any money out of the book.
Oh, you will. You will. But oh my gosh, there's so many people out there. It just warms my heart that are doing such good and for such selfless reasons. So
I know.
That's nice.
But, with your chapter, Cyrus and I loved your chapter. So Cyrus is one of the authors in the book, and he was our editor because I was completely dyslexic when I was at school. So I needed a Cyrus to get, sorted out. But your chapter was great. I think you already had it edited and done, and you're good at all that stuff. But, what you have done with your chapter is what you do with your blog. You take people from 0 to 100 miles an hour really quickly. So people find you because they're grieving, and especially people who have lost a child or have, been involved in a suicide. So you get a lot of that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, for sure.
Exactly. And inside...
Well, sometimes people who just fear death too. So, but mostly people who grieve, yes.
Yeah. And people who are grieving are not usually interested in who we are as components of consciousness or where we come from or aliens or all the all the topics that you discuss in the blog, which I find fascinating. But you take them there. So they find the blog because of grief, and then as they go down that rabbit hole, there's just so much to explore with the conversations that you've had on the on the YouTube and on the blog. And that's what you've done in your chapter too. You've talked at the beginning about being a grieving mother and how the worst thing that could happen has happened and how it affected your family. But then you go into some of the conversations you've had with Erik, and this is the part that I love when you're talking about who we are as consciousness. We're a part of a big field of energy of consciousness made of energy. We're individual segments that are conscious, but we're also the whole, kind of like a hologram. Now, this is Erik talking to you through, I think, was it Jamie who said that? Because that's out of your book.
It is. Yeah. Yes, definitely. But absolutely, I mean, do you remember, like maybe you're too young, remember those little hologram skull necklaces?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a hologram, and if you were to break that, say it's a picture of you instead of a skull, if you were to break that on the ground, you could pick up any shard and you would see the whole Karen Swain under the microscope. So, so we are whole and part of God, which is God is everything. God is light. God is love. Love is everything, etc.
Exactly. And I remember reading that in your book when you sent it to me when we did the last show. And I was just thinking, this is just brilliant. I love this. So I loved that you put it in the chapter as well, and where are we? This statement, in the simplest of sentences.
I aim to please, Karen.
We keep having freezing problems. I don't know why, because my internet's usually good. And I haven't got my daughter streaming movies upstairs.
Mine is super fast.
And yours is super fast.
Yeah, mine is usually. Yeah.
We have to ask whoever's interfering to just thank you. It's that you say, in the simplest of sentence, we are sentient energy. I love that. We are sentient energy.
That's self-aware.
That's self-aware.
Yeah. Sentient energy that is self-aware. I love that too. Yeah.
Oh,
Erik.
This part, I've heard someone describe us as consciousness moving through their various perspectives, experiencing ourselves. So this is like, you put all this in the chapter, and when Cyrus read it, he was like, I really love Elisas chapter. And again, so you're taking the reader from 0 to 100 miles an hour really quickly, because you're talking about a grieving mother, and anyone that's a grieving anybody can relate. And then you're going into these sort of like fabulous concepts. It's wonderful. How do you find people that, so many people are reading the blog, when you're listening to people's comments, are they mostly talking about grief, or are they getting into these subjects that Erik gets into?
Everything. I mean,
everything.
The first few years of the blog was a lot about grief, the human experience, things like that. And only after a while did we start, I kind of ran out of material. So I thought, well, let me ask Erik some questions. He's supposed to be Mr. Know-It-All. So, and if he doesn't know it, he'll be able to pull it out from thin air somehow. So then I started getting into, well, what is love? What is time? What is consciousness? What's the consciousness of an animal compared to human beings, just all sorts of possible things.
Yeah.
What happens when we have a lucid dream, just everything imaginable.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of the now, you know, like, so how long ago? 7 years ago. So you've really only been thinking about this sort of stuff for the last 7 years, and you've gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour too, or 1,000,000 miles an hour in that 7 years. See, I started thinking about this when I was probably about 12 or 13, and, you know, watching my mum get sick, I'm like, why is she sick? Then she dies. I'm like, where did she go? And if she went somewhere, where did she come from? So those questions. Yeah. But, you know, back then there wasn't an internet. There wasn't a lot of information around. So it was a really slow unfolding for me. But today, people's awakening experiences is so fast. You know, they think they're grieving, and then they're reading about consciousness and aliens.
I know. Isn't that something?
Isn't that something?
Yeah, absolutely. But they're very open to it. And they're intrigued. And so many people just feel like it feels right. What Erik's saying about consciousness, it feels right on a soul level. It's like I knew this all along, but I've never heard it from anybody. But I knew it on such a soul level, basically. Yeah,
that's absolutely right. I mean, that's the way to come at any information, is to listen to how it feels. Because our souls, like Erik's soul, is connected to all that is. So we can access anything we want, just like he can access any. But he's not streaming it through the ego. We've got to stream it through our ego, which says, "Oh, that's bullshit."
I know. We've got a brain saying, "Oh, right, you're not going to for that one, are you?" Yeah, I know.
So that's true. So we have to listen to how it feels and not listen to what we're thinking about it. Because I've, you know, over my time looking at my mind, it goes, "Oh, that's bullshit." And then the year after, I'm like totally on board. So
I know. Well, that's what I used to be like too. You know, as a physician raised by two atheists, so if somebody said, "Okay, I'm going to a psychic tomorrow," I would just get this vision of this gypsy hunched over a crystal ball and kind of laugh to myself, snicker. I was so rude. How thoughtless. Grandkid alert. Anyway, so yeah, it took me a while, and then Erik's death sort of changed everything. What really changed everything was 3 days after his death, when when my father called in a panic. I mean, he's a militant atheist, this guy, or he was, and said that he was sitting in his chair reading the paper, I mean, wide awake, and all of a sudden he looks up and there's Erik standing right in front of him, and he freaked out. He said, "I'm so startled. I don't know what to believe." And this is a guy whose first words to me after I said, "Erik's dead," he said, "Sorry, Lisa, Erik's going to turn to dust." So that's how atheistic he was.
But you know what I find fascinating about this, Lisa, is that I've heard you say that before he transitioned, he actually, even though he had that experience, he still didn't change his perspective.
That's right.
And you see, that is the grip the ego mind has a hold on us. So he was just, you know, he's not an awful person. I know you're not a fan of him, but he's just a man believing his thoughts, right? He's just a man believing his negative or stressful thoughts.
Exactly.
And, you know, what's really interesting about these sort of scientific minds, and I know you used to be one, and believe you me, I have a skeptical mind. It's like, I can't believe that I believe all I do because I have a skeptical mind. We think we're so intelligent when we say, oh, that's just not possible. That can't be right. That can't be right. You know, we think we're so intelligent, like we know.
I know. And like we know better.
We know better. I know. So the only intelligence to listen to really is the intelligence of the heart, like how it feels. Erik rabbits on about this all the time. He's like,
yes, he does.
You're emotional beings. You're emotional beings. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. He says that as human beings who ignore the fact that we're emotional beings and rely on our rational side more, we tend to have a thought about something, and then that will evoke an emotion, and that emotion will lead us to a choice of some sort or a decision.
A choice.
Instead, we're supposed to feel first. I mean, feel with your heart, like you said, your intuition, and then have that emotion create a thought, and that thought can create the choice. So we got a little bit backwards. We're dyslexic emotional beings. That's what we are.
Absolutely. Isn't that funny? We're dyslexic emotional beings. You know, I was really dyslexic as a kid, and what I found out that if you are a dyslexic person as a child, it means that you're more emotionally based than intellectually based, right?
Really interesting.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, the soul chooses to do that. Like, I have been a doctor and a scientist in quite a few past lives, and I've been subject to the grip of the ego mind taking over my life and not allowing my ever, like, that's, I remember someone was looking at a past life of mine, and she's saying that I was a man, I was a doctor or a scientist, and I'm screaming at my wife because I'm saying, how can you talk about that rubbish? She was talking about astronomy, not astrology, but astronomy. So
wow,
we're going to go back a couple of hundred years, and I'm vilifying her for being so, I'm ridiculing her for being so ignorant. So I, in a past life, was really gripped with that, kind of like your dad, right? And my dad was similar to your dad too.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's interesting when she was saying this, I was watching her, it was like years ago and I was young, and I'm thinking, God, she's describing my father.
Oh my gosh, that is something.
And then I realized I chose him for that reason, to see what it looks like. You know, I chose that. So that
maybe I did the same.
Yeah, so that I wouldn't be like him. And
yeah.
Another thing, you know, when I chose to be dyslexic, it meant that I had to focus more on the feeling sense and the intellectual sense, because the intellectual sense was kind of dumbed down.
Yeah.
So isn't that interesting?
That is fascinating. Well, you know, we've had so many times in history where these things happen. Like, remember, we used to think the world was flat, right? And then the guy stood up and said, who was it, Copernicus? I don't know. I think the world is round. But, you know, he was ridiculed. I think they probably sent him to prison. It was horrible. And when people spew vitriol about, you know, toward what I do, I just say, hey, you know, the world is not flat. Sometimes I say that. And Arthur Schopenhauer said that truth goes through three phases. First, it's ridiculed. Oh, I bet I see internet connection unstable. Well, anyway, first it's ridiculed, and then it's scorned, but eventually it's accepted as self-evident. And that's what happened to the whole earth is flat, but it's really round phase.
I know. It's interesting. It's what's happening to everyone. And, you know, that ridicule, and that was something interesting enough. There's there's a beautiful movie out called Mary Magdalene, about Mary Magdalene. And an Australian director made it. He was the same director that directed and produced Lion, you know, the movie Lion, about the little Indian boy gets lost and he's adopted by an Australian, and Nicole Kidman plays the mother. And anyway, so I met this guy. Anyway, so I went to see, and he's showing Jesus' life. It's actually about Mary, but he's showing Jesus, and Jesus went through the same ridicule. He went through, you know, he's trying to teach people about what he knows from his connection to source, and he's getting the same ridicule, and people saying, you're crazy, that's, you know, it can't be, because they had their set of beliefs. Isn't it fascinating? It just, and I'm watching this movie.
Well, we're in good company, girl. Think about that. We are in good company. 2,000
years later, it's still as rife. You know, people are still kind of locked inside thought forms that are limiting them. And, you know, science can do that too, mind you, quantum science.
Oh, I was going to say the exact same thing, that material science has really set us back spiritually quite a bit. Actually, before, we had the ancient mystics and all sorts of interesting spiritual groups that we have less than now. I'm sure there's some. But so science has given spirituality a bad name, but now science is coming aboard and it's starting to bridge that gap. Like, now scientists think that the soul is made of neutrinos, the little particles that are so tiny they could pass through lead. And now they're realizing that the soul is tethered to the body in the hollow spaces of microtubules, those little tubes in cells that help it maintain its structure and or have a part to play in cell division. So, you know, we're getting there.
I know, it is fascinating.
Neutrinos are carriers of information.
Deepak said that years ago when I was on my spiritual search. He was one of the first people that made me even contemplate God, because I couldn't contemplate God as a young girl, because I was just like, oh, well, that religious stuff's bullshit. But when Deepak Chopra said, you know, God is like an infinite field of information and energy, you know, a unified field, and I'm like, okay, now that's something I can come at, you know, that definition of God as a unified field of all possibility.
Yeah.
You know, then that's it made sense to me. And that was the first time I could even sort of say the word God and mean it. But you talk about that in the chapter too, and I love that you put that in, because that is just fascinating to me about how that works, you know, how the soul is tethered to the body. But yeah,
that's so cool.
Isn't that cool? I was just, because
cool.
there's a few things that the experience component works for the contrast. I just sort of put out a few things. The experiential component works because of contrast, and often that contrast causes human suffering. Our purpose is to understand all facets of love and to remember that we are that emotion called love. To understand that the facet of love called forgiveness, you have to experience in life in which you are hurt or betrayed, in order to understand that facet of love called loyalty. You have to live a life where a friend or family member turns against you. So in this part, you're talking about contrast. So
the human experience,
the human experience. I love that you put all this in the chapter. It's so
try to stuff it all in as much as possible.
Well, what we're doing with the book is pretty much what you're doing with your blog. We're taking people from where to go. You know, the word death, I wanted to call it surviving death, because we were talking about people who, like you, who have survived the death of a loved one, but people who have also survived their own death in an NDE or even an OBE. But someone else brought a book out last year called Surviving Death, and Cyrus said, you have to change the name. And I'm like, oh, really? We called it Awakening.
I like it better. I like it better. I really do.
Yeah, because you were awakened by death. I was awakened by death. Yeah. It was an awakening process. And all the people that are writing to you are being awakened, usually, but they're being awakened either through studying your experience of death through Erik and having a relationship with you and Erik. And he's the dead dude. I call him the dead dude.
The dead dude, yes.
So they are awakening through this sort of death component.
And isn't that so much better than saying surviving?
Yeah.
Like people are survivors of child abuse. Really, they should be thrivers instead of. So surviving has kind of a negative connotation, whereas awakening is like a transformation, like a blossom opening up.
I know.
So I like it.
Isn't it great? Don't you love the way the universe works like this?
It's perfect.
You know, because it's a series, and this is what I want to talk about to all the people that watch you and all the mediums that watch you. It's a series of books we're putting together. This is the first book, which is centered around death, right? And the next book is just about awakening. So this series is called the Awakening Soul series. And because I had awakening in the series, I didn't think about it as the title of this book. But I thought, bugger it, use awakening on all the titles, you know.
Excellent idea.
And I'm looking for people's journeys of awakening to compilate into a book. I want to talk, you know, because I know there's a lot of people coming into their intuitive, mediumistic abilities, or they've already got them. They're just trying to understand them, to develop them, to expand them, or just navigate them. So I want to put a compilation of experiences like that in a book, sort of specifically for people who are like mediumistic and psychic abilities and channeling, because there's so many people awakening to that within them, or they've got it. They're just trying to.
Yeah, I mean, I must have like 50,000 blog members, and each has their own amazing stories. So I can put a call out to them. Hey, you guys got any good stories?
That's right.
Or you can write up something, and I can post on the blog. You get lots of material, lots of amazing stories. Wow.
Yeah. But like you, all the stories I want in the books are how they transformed your life. It's not about a pretty story, because, you know, your life has been completely transformed from this death experience, like completely and utterly, so much so your family don't even know who you are anymore.
I know. You know? They don't even know who they are anymore.
So how are they
all changed?
How do your family handle all the work that you put into the blog and everything? Are they coping with it? Are they, you know,
they're fine.
Are they feeling like Erik's getting more attention than everybody else?
Oh, no, because I make sure that doesn't happen. I make sure. No, I give everybody equal attention.
Yeah.
So I had to remember that, because every time I, have somebody too long on the iPhone, it's like, wait, why do you have, that's my grandbaby, why do you have Annika there all the time? What about me? So I had to okay, it's time to change. Just kidding.
I know. So that's what we're doing with this. It's a series of books, and you're a part of the first one, Death being, and the reason I did Death was Death was my awakening, but because of the show, when I put up stories of death, they're the ones that get the most hits. So I'm figuring a lot of people are wanting to know about this death thing. So,
well, of course. I mean, first of all, look at us. We're baby boomers. Maybe you're not, grappling with our own mortality. A lot of us have parents that are getting old and have one foot in the grave and another on a banana peel. So, and also, almost everybody has lost a loved one, at least almost every adult, even if it's a pet, etc. So death is just a big, huge, ubiquitous part of life, of everybody's life.
And the misunderstanding of what it is just crazy. It's just crazy how everyone is born and everyone dies, like every single, as I heard someone say in a speech once, no one's getting out of here alive. I mean,
that's true. I love that.
And
that's true.
And yet it has been so feared and misunderstood. So feared and misunderstood. It's crazy, isn't it? So what you're doing,
there's such an unknown, especially if you're a person who does not believe in people who can channel from the other side or believe EVPs, etc. Then you just think that's it. The lights are out. Yeah.
Well, it has been an unknown until people like you. Erik's book, the one that he wrote about describing what his blow by blow, like even you put this in the chapter, did it hurt when you shot yourself? And he said, no. He said, I made the choice, I pulled the trigger, and then the next minute everything was black, but I didn't feel anything. So, I mean, all those details are so fascinating. And
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I really, really, really love Erik's book, My Life After Death. I mean, it's, I'm not bragging because I didn't write it. I just, was a secretary with fingers that were like chicken drumsticks. But it's just everything from moments before his death. And I didn't like typing up that part because it was, and his actual death. I didn't like that. It was very difficult for me and what happened afterwards. But then, how he said his goodbyes, went to his funeral, then the crossing over, and then so much detail about what the afterlife looks like, what the sky looks like, what the physical body, the spirit body looks like, how emotions have changed, senses have changed. It's just so detailed. I mean, he did a masterful job. What trees look like, what kind of different animals they have there. It's so cool. Have you read it?
I have, because we talked about it on the last show. You sent it to me and I read it, and
that's right.
Loved it. I was just, I've been doing this thing for a long time, right?
Page turner, and it is an absolute page turner.
You think you know a few things. It's really interesting. I started my show not to ask questions, but to impart information, because I thought I knew something. And when I started the show, I realized I know nothing, because I interview people.
Oh, me too. I know nothing. I know nothing.
And Garnet and Cyrus, who's in the book too, Cyrus is an astral traveler, and he says he gets into a lot of trouble with the blog members and the Channeling Erik blog members, because Erik describes an afterlife the way he experienced it, right? And Cyrus describes an afterlife the way he experiences it, because Cyrus hangs out in the denser levels of the astral plane, which is where people can go when they transitioned, when they haven't sort of really finished what they wanted to do in a physical life. So the denser levels of the astral plane are very physical-like. And I was saying to Cyrus, when my best friend killed herself, she used to sit on my bed when I'd wake up in my astral body at night, and we'd hang out together in the astral plane, right, after she was dead. And I remember saying to her, why can I feel you? I can touch you. And you said that too when you hugged Erik, right? It feels physical. And I knew I wasn't in my body, right? And it felt like I'm touching her saying, why can I feel you? Why can I feel you? I'm not in my body. And so that is the denser levels of the astral plane. It's a more physical experience. And there are so many levels of the afterlife. Erik has explained a few of them, but there are so many more experiences, which, you know, it's going to take 3 lifetimes to get through all these experiences. So,
oh gosh, at least.
So Cyrus said,
all those lives are happening at once. Everything, past, present, and future lives are happening right now.
You know, that's something that my linear mind finds really hard to wrap my head around, that whole time thing. I get it, but I don't get it. You know, I get it, but I don't get it.
Well, Erik has a couple of analogies that are help. Consider a stack of books. Each of those books is a life, and you open up one book and, you know, you're reading that book. That doesn't mean the other books are not there. Or another one I like a lot is the wagon wheel. You know, at the center is our higher self, and we're putting out little tentacles of energy of ourselves, of our consciousness, to live other lives, past, present, future. And as the wheel, and you know, when you're finished with one life, you get sucked back up, and another life comes up. And as the wheel turns, it leaves tracks in the mud, and that's your linear timeline. So.
You know, I've seen that. I've read that in either on the blog or in a book or one of it, and I've had a bit of a chat to my mob, and I said, "Show me about that. Show me, give me more about that." And they've shown me that those spokes on the wagon wheel.
Yeah. Really?
That one spoke would be one life, but that one life has many different components. So you have a physical life, an astral life, and even different levels on that one spoke of different representations of that physical form and physical personality. So like we're wandering around in our astral bodies at night, having experiences that we often don't remember, or sometimes we do, and we have a dreamscape, we have dream experiences. So there is, like, on that one spoke of the wagon wheel, a different levels, different dimensions that one personality can experience, as well as all the different personalities that we're experiencing, called past life or future lives or other lives. It's just fascinating. Actually, they're giving me
it's fascinating.
They're giving me an image of that spoke being like a sphere, and not like a flat wagon wheel, but like a spherical, like sphere. If you can. Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
You get that? Yeah, they're just giving me this image.
Because you can go in all sorts of different directions. They're all quantum probabilities.
Yeah.
You know, every thought you create, you create a completely new reality. And if that thought is not maintained, then that reality sort of dies away. But then you have another thought. It's so cool.
And Erik's here, and he's giving me another image. And I know how Jamie or your mediums feel. I wish you could draw these things, because it's so hard to explain an image.
I know.
He's showing me these spheres, all like there's a sphere with all the spokes, and inside that sphere are different levels of energy, and he's kind of saying like it's all smashed together. It's all interacting with each other. So it's so interactive. It just blows my mind. You know,
that's cool.
My little puny linear mind is just. But if you had some sort of computer program, you could create what I'm seeing. Ooh, it just blows my mind. But anyway, I want to tell you what Erik did the other day. It was hilarious. So I was watching one of the last posts that you did on YouTube with a new medium. Mm-hmm. All right, and I was watching you stretch her.
Wait, what did I do?
You fire these questions at them. They're kind of nervous. And
are you talking about Jennifer? Yeah,
I don't know. I can't remember her name
at first.
But I just watched how you.
Dark hair?
Yeah, I just watch how you stretch these mediums, and you're such a teacher for them. You know, you absolutely launched their careers, if you like. It's like you did with Jamie. Who would have found out about Jamie had you not? You know, I mean, Jamie's perspective. She's amazing.
She deserves all the success she has. I may have helped push it along, but no, she would have gotten there eventually anyway. So
Yeah, but you really sort of set that rocket off. You put that rocket under, and you're doing that for so many mediums, which it's kind of like you're there to propel them, because you've got this following, and then you put them on your show. So now you're kind of going to propel them into a hemisphere, and that's going to completely expand their reality.
Oh,
and,
yeah, it does, definitely.
It stretches them. It really stretches them. So I was watching you, and I made a comment and I can't remember what I said, but I made a comment. And then it was late at night, because I was sort of like, cruising the internet late at night before I go to bed. Then I went to bed, and I turned my lamp on next to my bed, and it did a disco dance. It was like, I turned around and looked at it, because it didn't flicker. It did a disco dance. It was kind of like,
what do you mean?
It was flickering off and on, like flicker, 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 flicker.
Oh, okay.
Flick, 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 flick. Like it was kind of like dancing. It was like, and I'm just sitting on my bed watching it for a few minutes. And then I looked at the light in the room. It looked like a disco, because the lamp was going off and on.
Yeah.
It was late at night. And I looked at
got up and danced. There we go.
I looked out the window, and I thought, if someone was looking up at this window from the street, they would think there's a disco going on in this room.
Oh, gosh.
Totally Erik playing with my light.
He loves to play with lights, with radios, TVs, just electronics. It's just amazing.
I was just astonished, because I was just standing. It didn't stop for quite a while. Anyway, that was just funny, Erik. I haven't heard from him like that for a while, but it was just after I did this comment, and tuned into your energies. He's always there when I tune into you.
Oh, yeah. He will prank or visit anybody who asks them. Of course, you need to be aware, like pay attention, but also you can't have real heavy expectations, because that's a super dense energy. Everything's energy, thoughts, expectation, love, emotions. This coffee cup, that's Einstein would have referred to as liquid light. It is energy. Mm-hmm. And so if you're grieving, for example, your energy is going to be super dense, and it's really hard for these spirits who vibrate at a very high frequency to lower it down to get to you. It's like,
okay, so
I don't know where I was going with that, but it's okay.
Well, that's perfect. That's perfect, because you had asked a question. We were talking about that time where you were really asking, I want to know you're there. I want to know you're there. And then you saw him at the end of your bed.
Yeah.
And hugged him, and had that visceral feeling, right, of feeling his body. Yeah. And then you posed the question either on a video or on the blog. I don't know why I haven't had that experience again.
Yeah.
And he answered that question. And what do you think he said? I want you to tap into his answer, because I know you got it.
Yeah, I remember. Well, I don't remember. It's there. I got the tip of my tongue. See? Can you see it?
You've actually already said.
I just don't need it as much anymore.
That's a part of it. That's a part of it.
Because I don't need the proof anymore. Mm-hmm. But every mother wants to shoot me a text or an email or a letter, or just say, hey, how you doing, Mom? But I did have something recently. Can't remember, 2 nights ago. Anyway, what did he say? My memory is awful.
Well,
what did he say? What was the answer?
When I saw that, he spoke to me, and he said, you've actually even said it, to manifest himself in an astral form is to lower his vibration so that he's denser, so that he could hug you, and you could feel that hug from your physical perspective, because you were feeling from your body physical perspective, not from your mental perspective. You're having a visceral physical experience. So he said that he did that for you. It wasn't easier when he was more attached and to the physical world, the physical life that he had. Right?
That might be it. The early days, he hung around more in the denser levels, and but then he left, but he'll come back, and it's not like, okay, once you go through the tunnel of light, you can never come back to the lower planes again. That's not true. It's not a one way.
You can do anything. So. You can do anything you like. I've had people say, I went to him. I'm getting off track because I want to finish what else he said. He also said that you didn't need the proof anymore. he also said that he would prefer that you connect to him from outside your physical linear senses, more on a psychic sense. So he doesn't want you to be reliant on that experience to be the way that you connect to him. He wants you to speak directly to him from your knowing, from your from your connection to your own higher self, or you know, intuition, or your own knowing, and not to be reliant on those. You know, at the beginning, when that's all you thought you were, like, I am this physical body, I need to see Erik with my physicalness, right? So he said, okay, let's do that. So, but when you've expanded your awareness and your consciousness, he now wants you to rely on that aspect of you and not your physicality to have that connection with him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, because, you know, I have started, well, I did it before, but then I got undisciplined. But I like to talk to him, you know, in my mind when I'm on my daily hikes, my almost daily hikes. And so that active meditation puts me in a place where it's much easier to talk to him, or in the bathtub. That's another one. So he's seen me naked, but that's okay. That's okay.
But, you know, this business of not being physical anymore, I remember years ago when I was a young girl, I went to see a psychic, and he was this fat old man who lived up the road in Bondi Junction, and most people said, when am I going to find a boyfriend, and what am I going to do for my... And he said, have you got any more questions? And I said, when am I going to be enlightened? And he kind of looked at me like, oh, that's not what most young girls ask.
I know.
And then he starts rabbiting on about his experiences. And when he told me that his little dog had died and then remanifested back into the physical body of a little dog, a bit like, exactly like the story with your father, right? And then and then jumped up on his lap to thank him for looking after him. I'm like about, I don't know, 18, 19. I've gone, I'm out of here. This guy's lost his, you know, like he's lost it. I'm thinking, that's, you know, like I said, okay, thanks very much, paid him the money and then got the hell out of there. But, you know, years later, I realized that that's possible, that you can rematerialize into what looks like and feels like a physical form. And it's amazing, isn't it? Isn't it amazing?
It is. And, you know, speaking of, with psychics, for example, sometimes a reading, you know, you have a reading, it's like, oh boy, they are way off. But sometimes if you're just patient, those things come to fruition. I remember we had this friend who's a psychic, and, you know, I didn't take her super seriously at that time because I was an idiot. But anyway, she told me, Elisa, you are going to be in Norway traveling on the country roads, and you will encounter this accident, and you will help this little girl, and your family will be looking, and they'll be thinking, oh my God, she is a real doctor. So instead of a clumsy mom who trips over every single crack in the road. And so I thought, we never go driving in the country. Where's Norway? Oh, God. And so a couple of years later, we're driving on a country road in Norway, and there's a little girl. She ruptured her spleen. I had to stabilize her. And then, okay, the ambulance came. And so I got back in the car, and, you know, Rooney looks at me and says, do you know what just happened? I'm like, what? Do you remember Kimmel? Yeah. So the reading where, so yeah, sometimes it doesn't seem possible, but if you just wait long enough, things like that come to fruition.
Absolutely. But a lot of mediums too read probable realities. So this is something that a lot of people don't talk about with mediumship, because, you know, a lot of people go to mediums because, well, the majority, like, what's happening in my future? They're worried about the future. Whereas Erik,
yeah, I know, but it's the most probable reality at the time. But, you know, there's free will, not only your own free will, but the free will of everybody who crosses your life, and even those who don't cross your life, who cross the lives of the people who do cross your life. So it's very complicated.
I know when we were young, again, 18, I went to Hawaii with a group of girlfriends, and we had a reading, a tarot card reading in a market, right? I can't remember what mine was, but my girlfriend's tarot card reading or hand palm reading or whatever, she was told she was going to die young, a violent death, which was kind of shocking. And so from that day on, she never looked at anything psychic or spiritual or anything again, because she thought that was a horrible message. But, Elisa, she was a very young, pretty girl who kind of fancied dating gangsters, sort of gangster-like people. She used to date these old men.
She should have used that tarot card to...
You know what? It did. It scared her. So she went home and she figured that maybe, because she was very sexy and beautiful, maybe, you know, attracting, I think, you know, she had this older man complex. She liked grandpa, not like father figures, like grandpa figures. It was hilarious. We all used to, because we love a deal, and we always like, why are you dating grandpas? And she decided she needed to get married to a young, decent man and settle down and have a family, and that's exactly what she did. So 20, 30 years later, we have this discussion. She said, I don't believe in any of that stuff you believe in. And I said, why? And she said, because of what happened when we were like 19 in the market. And I said, that psychic saved your life. I said, because you know what? You were on that trajectory. That's exactly where you were going. And one of her boyfriends or dates or whatever was gunned down in the street because he was like a, you know, shady character. Yeah, and so
she might have been with him at the time. You never know. Oh,
exactly.
Gosh. So what did she say to that?
She went, I never thought about it like that. It completely opened her mind to realizing that instead of that woman saying something that didn't come true and it was all bullshit, that woman said something that could have come true and saved her life. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
That is fascinating.
I know. So that's how psychics work. They can read probable realities, and if you're a vibrational match to that reality, that's where you're headed. But if you change your vibration or you change your thoughts or your ideas,
which she did,
you choose a different probable, you choose a different reality, which she did. Sliding doors, exactly. Yeah. I know.
That's awesome.
So the mediums. So what was happening? You took a little bit of a break lately. Are you feeling more refreshed?
Oh, yeah, I'm much better. But, you know, I had not taken a break. I, you know, post almost every single day of the week, and the radio show and a bunch of other stuff. And, you know, it can be emotionally draining, especially some of the emails and comments and whatever. Not the mean ones necessarily, although, you know, that's not fun. But, you know, the people who are in pain so much. And I'm like a mama who wants to fix everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes very hard to see people suffering all the time. But, you know, I had a problem with some of the mediums. You know, I always thought, well, mediums, they're so spiritual. They would never have an ego. But, you know, there was, you know, some jealousy of one medium against the other, and some cyberbullying, and it just got to be really messy. And no, so I just had to take a break.
Yeah,
basically.
Fair enough.
They're human. They're actually human.
Well, we're all human. We all have egos, and we all have to put our ego in check. You know, that's what we're here. We're here to take on an ego and then to navigate the ego. You know, I love my ego, but she doesn't drive the bus. I put her in the back seat. You know, I love that she questions. She doesn't know. She doubts. You know, she's like, she gets frustrated. Yesterday I was on the phone for 2 hours with the, you know, paying a fine. And I was working.
Oh, what did you do, Karen?
Oh, no, my daughter got a parking ticket outside my house and I paid it. So it took me 2 hours to pay that fine. What?
Oh.
You know, and so I'm sort of frustrated. And I always remember Wayne Dyer, you know, a brilliant spiritual teacher. I saw him on stage years ago. And he was saying that he has like 8 kids or something. One of his daughters, he couldn't find the keys, or he couldn't find something. He was rampaging through the house going, where the hell are my keys? And he said, ooh, if only your fans could see the guru now, you know.
Oh, no.
And he just
I get that too.
And he
I get that too.
Exactly. And he was telling a group of 1,000 people on stage, you know, that's who he is. He is the guru, the spiritual guru, but he's also the frustrated dad who gets upset, who gets pissed off when he can't find his kid. You know, like, we have an ego. So we have to love the ego part of us, just not let it drive the bus, you know.
I love all my flaws. I find them endearing. I think because people laugh at it. My family just has a field day. It's like, you don't know her like we know her. For example, I have this dent in the wall of my utility room. That's a perfect match for the top of my head because I was climbing up, on the washer to get something, and I fell back and blew through the deal. I don't know what it is about me and sheetrock. Another time, Rooney was gone, so we decided to, blow things up. So I got a bottle with dry ice and water, I can't remember, and we threw it in the pool, and it was way too loud. So we thought, let's take this inside. Not good. So I said, we'll hide behind this wall, and we'll put a ice chest on top of it. So we did that. It's like, oh my God. Boom. That ice cooler went through the ceiling.
Oh,
my husband
God.
was on his way home from the airport. He was so I went to Home Depot and just got all sorts of spackling and this, that, and fixed the whole thing. It's really pretty good looking, except you can see like a little rectangular shape barely, but it's there. So those kind of things I like because it reminds me that I'm so flawed. I can't get on a ladder without my family saying, no, or cutting a tomato without my, get away from the knives, that kind of thing. It's fun being human.
It's fun being human. And you know where I think we would go wrong? And I've definitely done this. And this is, again, who my dad was, is not being able to admit that we're wrong. And this is something
so refreshing. It feels so purgative to do that, though.
I know. And this is something you talk about in the chapter, being vulnerable, that vulnerability, something that Erik talks about a lot. And it's so important. I just want to stress this point because, as a young girl, I remember thinking, if I'm wrong about anything, I'm going to look bad. And so I would just pretend all the time and be right about everything, right? Were you like that as a doctor too? Like, yeah, I'm a
No, never as a doctor. No, I always said.
But, as the doctor persona, rather, like I'm.
Yeah, but no, I wasn't like that. But of course I had my pride as a young adult and I didn't want to be wrong. Depending on who I was with, especially if it was with my husband, because he's perfect at everything. I swear to God, he's awesome. But yeah, as a doctor, I was totally fine saying, I don't know what the hell is wrong with you, but I am going to find out.
Yeah.
But it's so refreshing to be vulnerable and open your heart. I've always liked that, and people think being vulnerable is weakness. They equate it to weakness, but it's not. It shows a lot of strength because you're just opening up your heart to the slings and arrows of other people. And it's just so refreshing. It's really refreshing to hear it from other people.
But it's freeing. It frees you from the cage.
That's it.
It's like you're in jail. It's like you're in jail. If I can't be wrong. I've watched my teenage nieces sort of you dress up and be beautiful and in a way just not being able to be wrong because they're so scared that if they're wrong about something that they'll be judged or vilified. There's just some fear that keeps them in jail. I mean, this is the last thing you say in the chapter. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's a position of strength. It allows us to live a life of love. We also learned that to be vulnerable, we need to feel first and think second, which we talked about, and take being mindful of our own intuition, our heart space. Ordinarily, we humans do the reverse. This is what we talked about. We think a thought and then it evokes an emotion, and that emotion creates a choice or reaction, which we spoke about. But I love that you put that in, this, my daughter was saying to me, we went up to get some bread. I wanted some svelte bread, right? And she's going,
oh, yeah.
It's not svelte, Mum. It's spelt. It's spelt. You've got it wrong. You've got it wrong. Not svelte, spelt. And I'm like, I can't get anything right, can I? And she goes, no, you can't. You always say the wrong thing. I said, I know. I just can't get anything right. I'm pretty much wrong about everything, aren't I? And she's going, well, yeah, usually you are. But that freedom of being wrong, it's like, because it doesn't mean that you're a lesser person if you say spelt instead of svelte or svelte instead of spelt. I mean, like, if you get stuff.
Yeah, you could have said, hey, it's spelt in Swahili, okay? I know this. How much Swahili do you know, girl?
But that would be hanging on to your point of view instead of being vulnerable and wrong. There is just this freedom in saying, you know what, I'm totally wrong. Yeah, you're right. I can't get anything right.
Yeah.
It's a freedom to be,
Or if you're in an argument of like, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right now. Sometimes it's just good to say, yeah, you might be right. Just that. You're not admitting that you're wrong. It's just like, oh, you might be right. That's it. That's freeing. Exactly. Another thing that Erik taught me is so neat to say, instead of when something bad happens, instead of saying, oh no, just say, oh well, I just like that. That is also very freeing to me anyway.
I know. Well, think about it. I'll tell you what happened while I was on the phone. So Annika was bringing something to the house as my daughter, and her friend came to
Her
bring
name's
it.
Annika?
Yeah.
How do you spell it?
Well, I spelt it phonetically because I was dyslexic, so I spelt it Anika when she was born. But it's, you know, I mean, it's a Scandinavian name, right? It's like a Dutch.
Yeah, my youngest is Annika.
Yeah.
A-N-N-I-K.
Oh, you've got double N-I-K-A, because a lot of people spell it A-N-N-E-K-E, Annika.
Oh, okay. Well, in
Mm.
Norwegian, it's A-N-N-I-K-E. Swedish is A at the end, but we're Norwegian. My husband's Norwegian, but he didn't want a Nike. You know, if he had an E at the end, it'd be all sorts of trouble.
Yeah,
so
I know. She says, you know, you spelt my name wrong, Mum. I go, oh, yeah, no, I can't get anything right. Anyway, she had parked on the medium strip, and her friend had got this ticket, you know, $600 for the 2 tickets. And well, going back to, instead of damn you.
I just said, oh no. Do you hear me? I said, oh no. I should have said, oh well.
But,
well, it's not my money.
In those moments, like, we have a choice. In those moments when the shit hits the fan, we have this choice. Do I get upset about it? Do I rally? Do I rampage? Do I keep being upset about it? Do I let it destroy my day? Do I let it destroy my tomorrow? Do I fight it? Do I ring up the department and say, this is so unfair? Mm-hmm. Or do I just pay the bill and let it go? You know, it's like we have these choices. And so I had that choice yesterday, but we have these choices all the time.
Well, you just let it go. You figure, hey, what's it going to matter 100 years from now? Seriously. Pay the bill, and then you have your kid pressure wash every single house in the neighborhood to pay you back. That's what I did when Michelle got her first fender bender. She was
really?
Like, well, I didn't mean to. She had just gotten her driver's license.
Yeah.
And I said, I know you didn't mean to, but, you know, I didn't do it. So, yeah, it's $500, girl. Well, you know, I don't want to pay that. I don't want to be, well, okay, here's a pressure washer. Go. Go on with your bad self. So she did it. Paid it all back.
But, you know, that choice of feeling good, that's that selfish choice, right? Do I get upset or do I feel good? Do I just let it go and go,
yeah,
you know, what feels better? Yeah, that's the better choice, the higher choice, but the selfish choice too. Because rampaging and going, this is so unfair, this doesn't feel good. No.
It doesn't feel good at all.
So how long have we been chatting? I think I've said everything I wanted to say about the chapter. I wanted to talk about your mediums and say to your mediums the same thing, any of them that are watching. If you feel upset or jealous about another medium, just remember, take the better choice. You know, be selfish, feel good. Feel good about Feel good about your own talents, your own ability. Yeah. And how you're making a difference in the world, because that's what we're all here to do. And
that's right. Mm-hmm. And you are doing a good job of it. I want to commend you.
You're doing a good job too. I want to commend you. As I say, your blog has rocked my world. That book, Erik's Book, really shifted.
That's amazing. Wow.
It's when I read his book, I had this intellectual understanding of what it might be like to die like never before. Like I only had some fuzzy understanding of what the afterlife was like. And when I read his book, it really sort of dropped. It was a real...
Yeah, it totally takes the mystery out of death. Mm-hmm. I love the chapter on the blackness. That was really cool too. But we won't give anything away. But listen, if you want, write me up something and I want to share the book with people and put it on my bookshelf and all that stuff, okay?
Yeah, that'd be good. And also for any of your fans or your mediums out there that want to share their story, you know, we've got 3 more books coming up. We've got My Awakening Story, which is pretty full, which is just people's spiritual awakening, not necessarily connected to death, but, you know, through reading a book or through getting sick, or there's a million ways we can awaken.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there's a million ways we could die too.
There's a million ways we could die. You know, another book I want to do is dying. I want to put stories, because this is something that doesn't happen. I want to put stories of how people died well, you know, without pain or suffering. Yeah. You know, I remember as a kid, and I think this might have been on your blog or it might have been on Cyrus's blog. I can't remember his Facebook page. someone was talking about why do we have to get sick to die? Why do we have to suffer to die? Yeah. And we don't, because I remember as a kid.
We don't really.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of people just die in their sleep.
In their sleep. As a doctor, you probably would have seen that, and of no particular cause. And even when they do an autopsy, there is no particular cause. They're just they just left their body.
Natural causes.
Natural causes, exactly. And today you don't hear about that as much. You always hear about suffering and sickness. I remember when I was a kid, people used to the old lady died down the road, or the grandmother, and it's like, what did she die of? Oh, she just died in her sleep.
Yeah.
But I'd love to do a book about dying well, how some people, not the suffering to leave the body, or the suicide, or the road accident, or the hit by a truck. We've got Nancy in the book who was hit by a truck and she had an NDE. She actually came back. But just, I know. We've had death. So the death, I talk about the death of my mother and how she came to tell me that she wasn't dead in so many dreams over and over and over again. But when I was a young girl, I didn't understand what she was trying to tell me, because I had no understanding of what was going on.
Of course not.
Except that I was dreaming about Mum all the time, and she kept saying, I'm not dead. And I'm going, if you're not dead, where the hell have you been?
That's great. Well, one thing that Erik has taught me, and I guess we can close on this if you want, is that we don't lose people. We don't. I mean, they just basically lose the shell that's been their little car driving around in the human experience, and they no longer suffer any of the physical or mental ailments that may have plagued them in life. So they're just in another dimension that's right on top of ours. And Erik, I think, said they're swirled together like a yogurt cone that's swirled vanilla and chocolate. And there's no reason why we can't continue to have a relationship. Everyone says, let him rest in peace. No, you don't have to. You can continue any kind of relationship you want with your loved one. So do it.
And many relationships are better, because you're not grappling with the human ego that says, I'm right and you're wrong. True. And I judge you, and, your lifetime, often there's family relationships are fraught with people's choices. Maybe strict religious people, they marry outside their religion, or they do something the parents are, and so they're fraught with these judgments. And when the person transitions out of their ego mind, their relationship is a lot better. Right. And like you and Erik, you've got access to someone who has this broader perspective, so you can
actually I mean I used to homeschool him. And so now he's my teacher. I still teach him some, but also I'm no longer the mom who wants to fix a mentally disabled or psychiatrically disabled child. It's not like Erik is somebody to be fixed. I want to heal him. It's not that anymore. So that's nice, because that was difficult. Well, thank you for having me on.
All part of the plan. Thank you for
part of the plan.
And thank you for being a part of the first book in the series. It was just, we love your chapter, and all the rest. I'll send you the book. I've sent you the PDF of the book, but I'll send you the physical book so that you've got something.
Okay.
So you can read the other people's chapters, because they're all fascinating.
Well, my chapter seemed pretty good, so I swear to God, I must have channeled that, because I don't write that good.
No,
that must have been channeled. Yeah.
You did really well. Know. Well, no, you did really well. You took a couple of excerpts out of your book, which I read, the neutrinos and stuff like that. But no, it was a great chapter, because again, it takes the reader from 0 to 100 miles an hour. So it starts off as the grieving mother and how terrible it is, and no one should go through that, and everyone can relate to that. And then you're like, whoosh, and now I'm talking to my son in the afterlife, and this is what he's telling me.
I know. But no speeding tickets. No speeding tickets involved.
So we are all on this awakening journey, and it's exponentially faster than it used to be. We are waking up so quickly now. It's interesting.
Thanks to the internet.
Thanks to the internet. When you think about, the level of consciousness you're speaking to, like, am I speaking to the grieving parent, or am I speaking to the spiritual seeker who wants to understand the meaning of consciousness? It's like we're speaking to all of it from where to go.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, honey. It's been a joy and a blessing to be with you again.
And likewise.
Bye for now. Don't you just love Elisa? I just love Elisa. I just have so much fun with her. Now, remember, go out and get yourself a copy of the book. Hers is one of the chapters. I had to have her in the book. I just love it, love it, love it, love it. Because, as you know, the proceeds are going to charity, to a few different charities, because I just want to spread the love. But we've got to start making money from the book. We haven't yet. Haven't even covered costs. But anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there. So spread the word, spread the word, spread the word. And if you are somebody who has a transformative story to share with the world, and you'd like to share it with the world, let me know. Go to the awakeningsoulseries.com and send a submission or a little note there and let me know what it is you'd like to say. There are plenty of people out there with amazing stories, but what I'm really looking for is how it's transformed your life and then helped you transform the lives of others, because it's not about sharing, extraordinary, pretty stories or, extraordinary, spiritually extraordinary stories. It's about how that transformed, how it awakened you, how it helped you get over your stressful thoughts, how it transformed your life, and then went on to transform others. They're the sort of stories I want to share. So, yeah, we've got some coming up: angel encounters and ET connections or ET encounters. There are many people that have had abduction stories and they've been really scared and they've been living inside fear, fearing the aliens are going to come and get them. And then they realize they are one of the aliens and that there was a soul plan put in place when they did their soul planning before they came into the body, that they would come into a physical look. There's so many stories. And then they have overcome fear. So one of my authors has written a book calling that From Fear to Love, from her alien abduction stories, going from incredible terror to absolute love. That's what we're looking for, from fear to love. So thanks again for watching. And if you'd like to be a little bit more involved, we have a little tribe called the Inner Sanctum Tribe, where we get together online twice a month to talk about these issues. We talk about deliberate creation. We talk about choosing love over fear. We talk about channeling. We talk about connecting to spirit guides. We talk about aliens. We talk about all of it. I invite people on who have been on the show, teachers, to share their experiences. The next person we've got coming up, guest teacher, is Garnet Schulhauser in a couple of weeks. He's coming on again. He was on last year to share his fourth book. I had him on the show, I think at the end of last year or at the beginning of this year. And he's coming into the Inner Sanctum to meet the people who come online. So be a part of the Inner Sanctum. Go to karenswain.com/Inner Sanctum and you can sign up there. It's very inexpensive, only about $20 American dollars a month or 25 Australian dollars a month. So thanks again for joining me. Love you all. Bye for now.
We are the love, we are the love.
Thanks so much for joining us for another enlightened conversation on Accentuate the Positive. If you would like spiritual guidance from my guides, Blissful Beings, go to karenswain.com for a reading, or to listen to more enlightened thought leaders share their wisdom. Go to the listen page on karenswain.com and choose who you want to listen to. All the podcasts are also available on iTunes. Remember to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, you name it, we're there. Until next time, bye for now.
If you feel like that's what you want to